Hey, this is McGarren Flack. Just going to go over some poster studies, like these two landscape paintings here. To start off, I like to use a hard edge round brush and just break in the major shapes. Those are also called primary shapes. So here we have the sky and the rocky walls. After I get the major shapes put in, I will break it down even smaller into the shadow shapes versus the light shapes and foreground. I don't really like the color that I put in first, so I'm going to change the chroma, increase it a little bit more, and throw in some secondary shapes in the background and the foreground, having a cast shadow. Notice I'm keeping all of the shapes relatively hard. I picked a square-ish brush to keep those edges pretty hard. I'm not filling in all of the shapes. I'm keeping it really loose and simple. This digital painting took me a total of 10 minutes. Here I went from the square back to the hard round and made the brush smaller because now I'm going to refine those shadow shapes, especially where they're cast shadows, and I want to keep a nice hard edge and increase the chroma and decrease the value of those shapes so that the rocks will pop out a little bit more. This is a digital copy painting from Edgar Payne, phenomenal landscape painter, traditional landscape painter. So here, again, just changing the chroma, changing the hue within the rocks to make it a little bit more interesting. Still keeping it blocky, no real detail information. This is a really good stage to be able to have a poster study, and that's basically it. On this next poster study, I am going to do a wintry scene, beautiful wintry scene, with a darker background. And the light will be coming across. The gray background that I started off with was a good value, but it was too gray, so I wanted to blue it up a little bit more. But then I used too much blue, and so I made it gray. One thing that I wanted to point out is if you look at the color that I'm selecting off to the right, I am not going perfectly white, I am not going highly chromatic, which is to the far right, and I'm not going to black or highly chromatic black. I'm kind of keeping in that nice grayish area between both paintings. So mid values, nothing too high, nothing too dark. There I tried a little bit more yellow to warm it up. It didn't work out too well, so I wanted to gray it back down. And I'm going to build up the lights now on these trees. These are snow-capped trees. Snow-capped? Is that even the right phrase? I don't know. Snow-capped trees with some cast shadows. So I'm making those edges a little bit harder and going around the shape of the trees to define them a little bit better so they don't look like a simple brush stroke, because that can be kind of annoying. Now I'll come back in and define the occlusion shadow that is in there and soften up some of the edges to describe the form of these hills a little bit better. I'll increase the value. Again, look, it is not completely white. I'm slowly building up those white shapes. And I'm varying my brush stroke to keep it interesting. Again, it's relatively hard-edged shapes, so it still remains like a poster study, but not so posterized that it looks like all the shapes are cut out. This one took me about 6 minutes to finish. I'll line them both up, take a look, zoom out, see how it looks at a distance, and they seem to read pretty well. So these are good poster studies that I could use to create the full landscape painting if I wanted to. Awesome. Have a good one.